The moment I pulled out that unmarked envelope from the pile of mail, a chill ran down my spine. There was no return address, just my name scrawled in an unfamiliar handwriting. My instincts told me to ignore it, to toss it aside like any other piece of junk mail, but something compelled me to slip a finger under the flap and tear it open. "Your husband is lying to you." Those 5 words hit me like a freight train. My heart pounded as I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. More accusations leapt off the page. Details about Dexter's supposed infidelity, claims about secret meetings and hotel rendezvous. "Wake up, Renata. The truth is closer than you think." I wanted to believe this was all some cruel prank. But then my eyes landed on the phone, tucked into the envelope, a blurry image of Dexter embracing another woman. My mind whirled as I studied every pixel, desperately looking for an explanation, something to disprove what I was seeing. "Oh my God, what is this?" Dexter's voice made me jump. I spun around, the letter crinkling in my tightened grip. He had just walked through the front door after another late night at his tech startup. His eyes widened when he saw what was in my hands. "It's nothing, just some stupid joke mail," I lied, my voice trembling. He reached for the letter, but I pulled it away protectively. "Let me see." "I said it's nothing," I snapped. A dozen emotions battled within me: shock, disbelief, anger, but mostly a nagging fear that there may be some truth behind these horrific accusations. Dexter's brow furrowed with concern. "Renata, you know I would never cheat on you. After everything we've been through together, how could you even think that?" My mind rewound to the struggles we'd endured over the years, the miscarriages, the financial hardships, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, questioning if we'd ever catch a break. Through it all, Dexter had been my rock, my shelter against the cruel world. "You're right," I whispered, forcing a nod. I'm overreacting." He pulled me into a reassuring embrace, his familiar warmth providing a momentary blanket of comfort. But I couldn't shake the feeling that things had somehow shifted between us. As I hugged him back, something felt off. That night, long after Dexter had fallen asleep, I stared at the crinkled letter and grainy photo on my nightstand. My husband, my loving, loyal husband whom I'd trusted without question, looked like a complete stranger in that damning image. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Over the next few weeks, I became a master of deception. I watched Dexter's every move, studiously cataloging any suspicious behavior while putting on an Oscar-worthy act that everything was normal. And there was plenty that seemed off. The long hours at his startup began stretching into the late evenings and weekends. He started placing his phone face down whenever I entered the room, quickly minimizing whatever was on the screen. And then there were the random phone calls he'd take in hushed tones, retreating to another room for privacy. "Everything okay?" I'd ask when he returned, playing dumb. "Yeah, just work stuff," he'd mutter dismissively. On the nights he did make it home for dinner, Dexter seemed distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. I'd watch him from across the table, studying the man I used to know like the back of my hand, now a complete enigma to me. One night, after another of his extended Saturdays at the office, enough was enough. As Dexter slipped out the front door yet again, I grabbed my coat and followed a safe distance behind. I tailed him through downtown, watching as he met up with a slim brunette outside a trendy bar. She greeted him with a tight hug and a kiss on the lips. My heart shattered into a million pieces. So it was true. The letter, the rumors, all of it. Dexter, my husband of 8 years, the one man I thought I could trust without doubt, was lying to me. And not just with his words, but with his body too. I wanted to confront them both right then and there, to rush up and unleash the unbridled fury and anguish consuming me from the inside out. But I didn't. I watched, seething in silence, as Dexter and his mistress slipped inside the bar hand in hand. Something inside me had snapped. The veil of blissful ignorance had been brutally torn away. My faith, my love, my life with Dexter, all built on lies. When he finally skulked home in the early morning hours, I was waiting. My face a stoic mask, the letter clutched in my hand. "Where were you?" I asked, point blank. Dexter looked caught off guard, like a kid with his hand trapped in the cookie jar. "I told you I had to work late at." "Don't lie to me." I hurled the crumpled letter at his feet. "I know about the woman. I saw you with her." A smirk crept across his lips, one I didn't recognize, like he had been waiting for this very moment. "So you finally figured it out, about damn time." My palm connected with his cheek before I could stop it. But Dexter didn't even flinch, that same smug look plastered across his face. "Who is she?" I demanded through gritted teeth. "How long has this been going on? Does it really matter?" He gave a casual shrug. "You know why people cheat, Renata? Because they've given up. On their partner, on the relationship, on themselves." His cruel words sliced me to the core. The man I loved was gone, replaced by this vile, unrecognizable monster. "You're right," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "I did give up. On you." Turning on my heel, I stormed off to the guest bedroom and slammed the door behind me. The hurt and anger was like a raging inferno inside me now. But I wouldn't let it consume me. Not yet. I would harness that fire, let it fuel my determination, my hatred. And then, once I had the truth, the whole truth, I would take everything away from Dexter Wade. He thought he had given up on me. Well, now the gloves were off, and he was about to see how that mistake would cost him everything. "You're being ridiculous," Dexter scoffed, throwing his hands up dismissively. "This is all just a misunderstanding." I glared at him, clutching the damning letter in my trembling hands. "A misunderstanding? You were caught red-handed with another woman." "I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped. "How you've been lying to me for God knows how long, how you betrayed my trust in the most unforgivable way." Dexter opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "No, I don't want to hear any more of your pathetic excuses." His expression hardened into that infuriatingly smug look I had come to loathe. In that moment, he was a total stranger to me, worlds apart from the caring, devoted husband I thought I had married. "You're overreacting," he said coldly. "Women always do with these things." I recoiled like I'd been slapped. "What did you just say to me?" Dexter simply shrugged, seemingly relishing my shock and outrage. It was like he was baiting me, poking the bear just to get a reaction. Well, two could play at that game. If he wanted to match wits and see who could stoop lower, I would oblige him. Mustering all my strength, I finally regained my voice. "You're right, you deserve a chance to explain yourself." I forced a sickly sweet smile. "Starting with why you've been deleting all your messages with this woman." Dexter visibly tensed up at my implication of having proof. Good, let him squirm for once. "You've been going through my phone?" His cheeks flushed red with anger. I nodded innocently. "Among other things." Holding up a hand, I started ticking off examples. "Having your car tracked, logging into your email, checking your credit card statements." His jaw clenched and those telltale veins bulged in his neck, the dead giveaway that he was enraged. Still, Dexter tried his best to appear calm and in control. "You've completely lost it, do you know that? This obsessive jealousy, it's unhealthy." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Jealousy? That's just the latest in your sad litany of excuses, isn't it?" My voice dripped with venom as I took a step closer, glaring right into his traitorous eyes. "The truth is, I know everything, Dexter. I have evidence of your affair with Marla Jennings. All your emails, text messages, credit card statements for your dirty little hotel hookups." I paused to let that bombshell sink in before delivering the killing blow. "Hell, I even made copies of the disgusting selfies you two would send each other." The blood drained from Dexter's face as the truth of my words hit him. Gone was his arrogance, his feigned superiority. He shrank back, finally realizing he was naked and exposed. "How?" was all he could choke out. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" I gave a harsh, humorless laugh. "That I wouldn't fight for the life you ripped apart?" That familiar vein in his neck throbbed furiously now. I could practically see the gears turning, his mind scrambling for an escape hatch, any excuse, any lie that might spare him from the reckoning he deserved. But it was too damn late. "You made your bed, Dexter," I growled, feeling a small sense of victory at holding all the cards for once. "No more lies, no more deceptions. It's time to face the consequences." I turned and stormed out of the room before he could utter another word of protest. Let him sit and stew in his guilt and shame for once. From here on out, I made the rules. I would dictate every calculated move, and Dexter would soon realize that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The words burned like acid as they left my mouth. "Marla Jennings? You've been sleeping with Marla?" My so-called friend visibly recoiled, her face drained of all color. I knew I had her cornered. The evidence was irrefutable. Renata, I don't know what to say. Marla's voice trembled as tears welled up in her eyes. A flicker of pity flashed through me before being promptly extinguished by my burning rage. Don't bother. I shoved a manila envelope into her hands, printouts of emails, texts, and other proof of her torrid affair with my husband. The truth is all right here, in breathtaking detail. The lies, the deception, the hotel receipts. My lip curled with disgust. Oh, and my personal favorite, those X-rated selfies you two would send each other. Real classy stuff. Shame and mortification washed over Marla's face as she feebly thumbed through the incriminating evidence. She opened and closed her mouth wordlessly, any excuse or justification catching in her throat. I could have taken some satisfaction in her discomfort and humiliation. But in that moment, I only felt a slicing betrayal, not just from Dexter, but from someone I considered practically a sister. We shared everything, from joys and heartbreaks to hopes and dreams for the future. And yet she had zero qualms about backstabbing me in the most unforgivable way. So much for loyalty. So much for our friendship meaning anything. How could you do this to me? I demanded through clenched teeth, fighting back hot tears of hurt and fury. After everything we've been through together, everything I confided in you about my struggles with Dexter. Marla swallowed hard, her expression an uncomfortable blend of shame and defiance. I never meant to hurt you, Renata. You have to believe me. Bullshit. The harshness of my own voice startled me. That's exactly what you intended to do, sneaking around behind my back, spreading your legs for my husband. It's not like that, she shot back, a sudden fire in her eyes. I love Dexter. He loves me. We made a real connection, something you couldn't understand. I recoiled, feeling like I'd been physically struck. A real connection? You're delusional. Marla shook her head adamantly. Dexter wanted to leave you. He told me all about your failing marriage and how miserable he was. He pursued me from the start. Of course he did. It was all becoming disgustingly clear now. Dexter's modus operandi of lies, deception, and avoidance of taking any responsibility. Marla was just another smoking gun in his trail of shattered trust and broken vows. Don't kid yourself, I spat. My husband is a coward and a pathological liar. It's all he knows. He manipulated you just as easily as he manipulated me. Tears streamed down Marla's face, smearing her makeup into an ugly mess. A sick part of me relished the sight. You're wrong, she croaked out weakly. We have something real. He loves me. The desperate, hollow look in her eyes confirmed my suspicions. She was nothing more than Dexter's latest victim, another conquest willingly ensnared by his false promises and smooth-talking mind games. Marla was pathetic. But Dexter, he was the true monster I needed to stop. Without another word, I pivoted and stormed away, my mind already strategizing the most fitting retribution. An eye for an eye, that's what he would get. And once this was all over, Dexter would finally understand the bone-deguish and humiliation he put me through. I would return that pain tenfold. The fury blazed within me, consuming any mercy or sympathy I once might have felt. Dexter had demolished everything, my love, my trust, and the future we had planned together. Now it was my turn to watch everything he cared about go up in glorious, well-deserved flames. I paced back and forth in my living room, hands trembling as I clutched the damning evidence of Dexter and Marla's affair. My mind was racing, formulating a plan to make them pay for their unforgivable betrayal. Exposing their sordid secrets wouldn't be enough. I wanted complete and utter devastation, to obliterate everything they'd worked towards, to leave them as empty and hollow as I felt. A delicious vengeance, retribution for the agonizing pain they'd put me through. With each calculated step, the scheme took shape. I'd strike fast and without mercy. Let the shockwave ripple through our entire social circle and professional networks. By the time I was done, Dexter and Marla's lives would be in smoking ruins. My phone buzzed, jarring me from my revenge-addled thoughts. A text from Dexter. We need to talk. I smirked, picturing the desperation consuming him now that I finally held all the cards. Let him sweat it out a little longer. Several hours passed before I finally responded with 2 simple words. Your office. When I arrived at Dexter's sleek tech startup, his assistant gave me an uneasy look but didn't protest as I breezed past her desk and into his corner office. He was hunched over his laptop, pinching the bridge of his nose like a man grappling with the weight of the world. "This is a professional environment," I announced coolly, making sure my voice carried. "So let's keep things professional, shall we?" Dexter flinched, clearly not expecting my detached bravado. When our eyes met, the pathetic resignation on his face almost made me smirk. Almost. "How could you do this to me?" His words were laced with quiet anguish. "To our marriage?" I arched an eyebrow incredulously. "Are you seriously asking me that question, after everything you've done?" "I never meant to hurt you," Dexter pleaded, attempting one of his charm offensives. But the act held no sway over me, not anymore. Things just got out of hand with Marla. Before I knew it, I was in too deep. Too deep. I fought back a scathing laugh at his paper-thin excuses. "You don't get to play the victim here, not after you systematically destroyed my ability to trust." My voice dripped with disdain. "Secrets, lies, cheating. That's all you know how to do, isn't it?" Pain flashed across his features, my verbal blows clearly landing. "Good. I made a mistake," he conceded hoarsely. "A horrible, unforgivable mistake. But you have to believe I never stopped loving you, Renata. You're everything to me." He reached across the desk in a pleading gesture, but I instinctively recoiled from his grasp, like it was a venomous snake. "Save it," I hissed. "Your silver tongue stopped working on me a long time ago." This time, Dexter didn't try to mask the hurt etched across his face. He swallowed hard, seeming to accept that there was no coming back from this, no smooth talking his way out of the devastation he'd caused. And I was just getting started. "You want to know how this is going to play out?" I asked, keeping my tone, untarnished detachment. "First, I'm going to take this evidence of your affair with Marla." I tossed the manila envelope onto his desk with a dull thud. "And I'm going to share it with everyone. Our friends, your investors, current and prospective clients, the whole damn world if I have to." "And then?" he croaked out, eyes swimming with apprehensive dread. A slow, sinister smile crept across my lips. "Then you can kiss everything goodbye. Your company, your reputation, whatever sad delusions of happiness you had with Marla. All of it. You won't have a goddamn thing left to your name when I'm finished with you." Silence hung heavy over the room as Dexter absorbed the crushing weight of my vowed promise. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly like a fish gasping for air. I held his gaze unflinchingly, drinking in every agonizing moment as the first droplets of my vengeance began raining down upon him. "See you around," I muttered coolly, turning on my heel to leave. Or maybe not. The party was in full swing by the time I arrived, fashionably late. Laughter and the clink of champagne glasses filled the air as Dexter's friends and business associates mingled around the modern event space. I scanned the crowd until my eyes found my soon-to-be ex-husband holding court near the bar with his latest fling, Marla, draped all over him. They made for a perfectly punchable portrait of arrogance and entitlement, blissfully unaware of the reckoning that was coming. Taking a fortifying breath, I smoothed out the front of my red dress, chosen specifically for the occasion. Like crimson battle armor, striking and unignorable. This was my moment, after all. I crossed the sleek concrete floor with purposeful strides, briefly catching the eye of Dexter's assistant, Kelly. Her expression glazed over with trepidation, no doubt sensing the storm brewing behind my eyes. "Smart girl." "Renata, you made it!" A fake, toothy grin stretched across Dexter's face as he lifted his glass towards me. "We were starting to wonder if you'd show. And miss your big night?" I matched his artificial cheeriness, turning it back on him with sickening sweetness. "Wouldn't dream of it, dear." Marla's owlish gaze bounced back and forth between us like a spectator at a tennis match. I could practically see the worry gnawing away at her. The two of us making niceties through gritted teeth, the tension crackling like lightning about to strike. A small crowd had begun to gather around us, their interest clearly piqued by Dexter and I's impromptu reunion. Let them ogle and gossip like the privileged vultures they were. Their morbid curiosity was about to be satisfied. "Well," I proclaimed loudly, forcing an exaggerated smile as I scanned the rapt faces surrounding us, "I actually have a bit of an announcement to make." Dexter's bravado faltered as our eyes met again. My cold stare sent an unmistakable message that whatever came next would not be good. At least, not for him or his lover. Reaching into my clutch, I retrieved the sealed manila envelope that had been burning a hole through my purse lining for weeks. I held it aloft, letting everyone take in the suspicious package. You see, my dearest husband here has been keeping a few secrets. I paused to allow the confused murmurs to swell briefly before continuing. Intimate secrets he's been sharing with a very close friend. Half the room seemed oblivious while the other tensed, sensing the impending bombshell about to detonate in their midst. Dexter turned toward me with panic smeared across his features, any plea for mercy dying on his lips. No mercy would be shown this night. With a series of loud rips, I tore open the envelope and began pulling out its contents. Page after page of incriminating evidence of Dexter's torrid affair with Marla. Explicit text exchanges, scandalous photos, travel records, and receipts from their tawdry trysts. You see, while I've been home picking out baby names, Dexter's been picking out baby makers, I declared in a booming voice. And wouldn't you know, he chose the brightest bulb from our inner circle to stick it to. I threw the final few photos into the air, letting them flutter down like confetti across the speechless crowd and their horrified faces. Marla let out a strangled sob, frantically grasping at Dexter, as if he could somehow shield her from the nuclear fallout she'd been complicit in creating. "You lying son of a bitch!" someone shouted in disbelief. The catcalls and mutters of disgust rolled through the stunned audience like a tidal wave. I stood there, back straight and chin high, reveling in the carnage as Dexter's world burned all around him. Finally, after weeks of meticulous planning, my revenge was complete. Spinning on my heel, I strode away from the wreckage, casting one last look over my shoulder at Dexter. The hollowed, haunted expression carving his features nearly made me crack a smile. I had warned him about the consequences of betraying me. Now he got to witness the pulverizing aftermath up close. Let him choke on the ashes of everything he'd so arrogantly squandered. His business, his status, his future with that two-faced snake Marla. It was all gone, vanished in a single glorious gasper. As for me, I was free, untethered from years of torment and anguish. Finally, at long last, the shackles of Dexter Walsh's lies had been undone. It was time to let the healing begin. The fallout was swift and merciless, exactly as I'd envisioned. Within days, the collapse of Dexter's carefully cultivated life was splattered across every gossip rag and tech blog in Seattle. The disgraced CEO, felled by his own tawdry affair and web of deceit that came unspooled so publicly. Good. Let them run those scandalous pictures and seedy text exchanges on a continuous loop for all I cared. The more reputational damage inflicted on Dexter, the better. Across town, the lawyers were circling like sharks, each enabler and business associate looking to distance themselves from the implosion of Dexter's startup. Major investors pulled funding. Longtime partners cut ties. In a matter of days, everything he'd spent years building disintegrated into a smoldering ruin of hubris and betrayal. I'd orchestrated the perfect demolition, the ultimate retribution against the man who had so callously tormented me with lies and infidelity for far too long. With each ticking update of Dexter's downward spiral, a grim smile crept across my lips. This was the justice I'd hungered for from that first vicious sting of betrayal. To see him stripped bare of every ill-gotten gain, every shred of arrogance and self-importance dismantled along with his sordid, depraved legacy. The real gut punch, though, came from the most unlikely of sources. Dexter's mistress turned accomplice in his own destruction. Marla had been uncharacteristically silent in the days following my explosive reveal, no doubt licking her wounds and grappling with the seismic embarrassment of her home-wrecking ways being thrust into the harsh spotlight. Once the initial shock faded, however, her near-feral self-preservation instincts kicked in. I was alerted of her publicity tour by a string of frantic texts from Dexter, each one more pathetic than the last. "She's lying. Everything Marla's saying, it's all lies. You have to stop her, Renata. She's out for blood." "I never wanted to hurt you. You were my world." I barely made it through his sniveling pleas before hurling my phone against the wall, cackling at his feeble, desperate attempts at salvaging what minuscule scraps of dignity he had left. Flipping on the TV, I was greeted by Marla's smug face on the screen, that familiar, self-satisfied sneer sketched across her features. The had certainly grown a pair now that the opportunity for vengeance had arisen. Dexter made a lot of promises to me about leaving his wife and starting a new life together, she proclaimed to the salivating reporter. He laid it on thick, talking about soulmates and true loves conquering all that garbage. I rolled my eyes at the cloying sentiment, knowing full well the slimy game Dexter played. He'd mastered the art of telling women exactly what they wanted to hear in order to get what he desired. But it was all a ploy, you see, Marla continued. Standard operating procedure for Dexter Walsh. The lies, the manipulation, the complete lack of conscience when it came to using people to get what he wanted. On the screen, she held up a sheaf of papers and photos that looked disturbingly similar to the package I'd used to expose their affair. I have proof here of Dexter's countless indiscretions, records of the hotels, the emails, all the sordid details of how he betrayed his wife and took advantage of me. He's a selfish, dishonest coward who only cares about himself. The searing diatribe set my soul ablaze, every word piercing through me like a vindicating dagger's caress. At last, someone else could see and acknowledge Dexter for the venomous serpent he truly was. I leaned back and soaked in every lashing second of it. On the TV, Marla's face was contorted into a mask of white-hot fury, utterly unrestrained in her quest to obliterate whatever feeble existence Dexter may have reassembled. He'd played with fire one too many times, scorching both of us in ways that could never be forgiven nor forgotten. Now the burner was getting burned. A lifetime of transgressions finally catching up in one cataclysmic inferno of consequences. And I had a front-row seat to witness every glorious, well-deserved flame. You've turned into something unrecognizable. Dexter's words hung heavy in the air, more indictment than observation. His eyes bored into me with a searing intensity, as if he could somehow will me into feeling an ounce of remorse or shame. I simply shrugged, impervious to his desperate pleas for absolution. Maybe I'm just done playing the meek, subservient wife you thought you could walk all over. His face contorted with that all-too-familiar mix of rage and indignation. Is that what you think? That I looked down on you, treated you like some second-class citizen? Rolling my eyes, I shot back without missing a beat. Your actions spoke louder than any of your lies or hollow apologies ever could, Dexter. You don't get to be the victim here, not after everything you put me through. He opened his mouth to protest again, but I silenced him with a raised hand. Save it. I'm done caring about your justifications or what delusions you've cooked up to absolve yourself of guilt. My voice was a razor's edge, daring him to challenge me further. The papers have been signed, the given. It's over. Dexter's shoulders slumped in defeat. In that moment, he looked every bit the haunted, broken husk of a man his actions had reduced him to. Good. Let him marinate in the consequences he so richly deserved. I turned on my heel, leaving him to stew in the wreckage of his ruined life. Outside, the crisp spring air filled my lungs, reinvigorating and purifying with each deep breath. After months of anguish and despair, the shackles had finally been cast off. Dexter no longer had any hold over me or the power to inflict any more damage. His humiliating downfall and loss of reputation were the ultimate form of recompense, a scorching case of karma come full circle. In the coming days and weeks, I focused on rebuilding, renovating the house to depict my fresh start, cleansing every last remnant of Dexter's stain from the home we'd once shared. Our twisted marriage had been corrosive, near fatal to my sense of self-worth and identity. But now, alone and unshackled by his toxic influence, I was reclaiming it all. My friends and family rallied around me, offering sympathies and support, though I waved them off with polite yet firm dismissals. I didn't need their pity. What I'd done was an act of self-preservation, a protective right to purge myself of Dexter's miasmic presence in my life once and for all. In time, the calls from reporters and paparazzi grew less frequent as my role in Dexter's spectacular downfall became old news, eclipsed by fresh scandals and salacious stories. My name faded from the spotlight just as I preferred it, quietly, anonymously receding into the background as an unassuming graphic designer once again. Dexter, on the other hand, would never have that privilege, not after the way his personal depravities had been laid startlingly bare before the world. Disgraced, destitute, and most unforgivably alone. Deserted by his fair-weather friends and opportunistic leeches the moment his status and wealth evaporated. Only Marla remained, and even her continued involvement was undoubtedly self-serving, a final act of vengeance before disappearing into oblivion as well. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I received a letter, an unsigned, handwritten plea for forgiveness and understanding. Even without a name attached, I recognized Dexter's distinctive scrawl immediately, that same elegant penmanship which had once professed eternal devotion and fidelity, until his pretty words curdled into lies and infidelity. I didn't bother opening the letter, merely tossed it into the crackling fireplace and watched the pages curl and blacken as the carefully inked epithets turned to ashes. No more words, rationalizations, or empty promises. Dexter had gambled everything for his tawdry indiscretions, and the house had folded around him. He was the architect of his own devastation and karmic reckoning. All that was left for me was to let the purifying flames run their course, scouring away the last vestiges of his poisonous influence over me. From those smoldering embers I would be born anew, emboldened, resilient, and finally free. The rest of my life was awaiting, full of infinite possibilities, uncompromised by Dexter's shadow, and I had no intentions of looking back any longer.
My father, aged 52, and I, at 25, reside in my mother's ancestral house, an inheritance I received when she passed away from cancer when I was 16. I share the space with my 3-year-old Cocker Spaniel, Moxie. Recently, my father surprised me by marrying his high school sweetheart, Steph, 51, whom he had been in contact with for almost 2 years. They swiftly moved into the house a week after their small wedding, a ceremony to which I was not invited, unaware of their relationship. Steph, along with her twin stepdaughters, Lizzie and Lexi, fake names, both 20, and their 2 chihuahuas, Gucci and Herms, relocated to our home. The twins attend a nearby state college, and my father proposed that they live with us to save on expenses, to which I reluctantly agreed, thinking the spacious 7-bedroom house could accommodate all of us. However, complications arose. Firstly, Steph demanded my room, citing the need for space for her luxury items. I firmly refused, asserting my long-standing claim to the room. A compromise was reached wherein my father offered his closet space to her. Secondly, the twins had a habit of entering rooms without knocking, causing me considerable embarrassment during a work meeting when Lexi, wearing a bikini, barged into my office. Furthermore, their untrained dogs left messes around the house, endangering Moxie, who was often harassed by them. I found her injured one day, prompting my concern for her safety. To aggravate matters, family photos, including those of my grandparents, great-grandparents, my mother's family, and myself, were repeatedly moved without my consent. In a recent incident, Steph replaced these pictures with her own, causing a heated argument between us. She insisted on setting house rules, claiming it was her domain, implying I lacked proper upbringing due to my mother's absence. I could not tolerate her disrespect in my own home. Furious, I confronted her, asserting my ownership of the house, and told her unequivocally that if she and her twins refused to respect my boundaries, they could pack their belongings and leave. I reminded her, "Lady, you are living under my roof," affirming my authority in the situation. "This house is my inheritance from my mother, and at this moment, you, your twins, and your dogs are trespassing. Get out before I call the cops." When my father returned home early that day after Steph told him what transpired, I explained my perspective. It was mentioned that they were still adjusting to the house, and the move had been challenging for them. I shared all the issues I had been facing, but my father insisted that things would improve if we gave them time. I had endured their behavior and reached my limit. I firmly stated that enough was enough. He continued to defend them, so I made a decision. I told him he could either move out with them or stay, but he had until the end of the week to make his choice. Did I do the right thing by forcing my dad to choose between me and his new family? I had given them a chance, but disrespecting my mother's memory in the house where we both grew up was my breaking point. The top comments before reading the updates were overwhelmingly supportive of my decision. "Definitely yes, good for you." Literally my first thought. nodding like yes. Good, they sound terrible. Girl, you did what you had to do, and I would 100% do the exact same thing. Your father, on the other hand, needs to grow some spine. It seems like she's got him wrapped around her fingers. I doubt it was even his idea to get married without inviting you. If he ends up choosing them, just cut them out, though no contact. You don't need that kind of toxicity in your life. Also, make sure he can't contest your inheritance regarding the house, just so they can stay there. You know, people these days. I hope it turns out in your favor. Don't put the secret wedding on the wife. Daddy Dearest dated for 2 years, hiding it so hard that OP had no clue whatsoever. Even if this was her idea, Daddy Dearest was totally in support of it. The amount of entitlement your father's wife and stepdaughters have is absurd. I am so glad you kicked them out. As far as your dad, his behavior is also pretty terrible. The whole thing of, whoops, I got married, didn't tell you, and oh, by the way, can my new family move in? He is not showing any courtesy, respect, and honesty. I wouldn't be surprised if the wedding was the stepmom's idea, especially not inviting the daughter of the man you're marrying. Like, what is that? Just a quick update. I've read through all your comments, and I want to express my gratitude for your support. It means a lot to me. I realize it might seem like I'm a pushover, and maybe I am. I just prefer avoiding confrontation and arguments. I'm not the type to engage in fights with someone. I'd taken your advice and decided to change the locks around the house. Unfortunately, the gate on the property is old and rusted, and it's been open for who knows how long. I can't do much about it at the moment. I've contacted the same lawyer who handled my mom's will to review if there are any loopholes or chances that my dad could contest it. I'll be meeting with her in a couple of hours. About my dad, he's a good man. He's worked hard to provide for me and my needs after my mom died. He's never asked me to tap into my money to help with living expenses, etc. He earns a decent amount as an engineer, around 6 figures. So I don't think he's after my money, but I could be wrong. I think he's just blindsided by the fact that someone still finds him attractive at his age. It didn't help that it was his high school sweetheart. I confronted him about his impromptu wedding and how he kept things from me. He said he didn't know how I would react if I knew he was dating his ex-girlfriend before he met and admired my mom. I was upset, but I eventually got over it since he seemed happy having her around. I don't know the full story between them or if there's any bad blood between her and my mom to make her act out and disrespect her. Steph and her daughters are staying somewhere in town now. Frankly, I don't care to find out where. They have the means to take care of themselves, and if they run out, they can always sell their luxury bags. They seem to have so many that they require a whole closet just to store them. For those wondering about my relatives, my mom was an only child, and my grandparents left everything to her. When my mom passed away, I inherited most of what she had, and she also left some to my dad. My grandparents on my dad's side live about 6 hours away with my uncles and cousins. So it's just me, my dad, and Moxie here. Speaking of Moxie, she's doing well. She seems happier and enjoys the quietness around the house. I'll update again as soon as I can. But once again, thank you all for your support. It sounds like I'm safe, and I appreciate your reassurance that kicking them out was the right thing to do. I've taken your suggestion to heart and will be sure to keep anything sentimental or valuable to me locked up, just in case she comes back and tries to destroy some of my pictures, etc. This is indeed a great suggestion. In addition to changing the locks, I should document and keep records of everything with monetary and sentimental value. Keeping a video record, photographs, a ledger, or a spreadsheet of my belongings is a wise move to ensure their protection. As for the size of my property, it has indeed been in the family for generations. It's filled with a lot of history and sentimental value, making it all the more important to safeguard. You're right. There's nothing wrong with being kind. But sometimes you do have to toughen up and find your strength, which is precisely what I did. I plan to keep my valuables somewhere safe until I'm absolutely certain they are out of my life. If things turn sour, I may consider renting out rooms, but I'll make sure to have a proper lease agreement in place. You made a good point about evaluating my relationship with my dad. It is perplexing that he didn't tell me about his dating and marriage plans, but had no qualms about moving them into my house. It seems that he cares more about her than me, which is disappointing. I did have a conversation with my dad about his impromptu wedding and why he kept it from me. He claimed he was unsure how I'd react if I knew he was dating his ex-girlfriend before he met and married my mom. However, it does seem like he was more concerned about upsetting me over the dating part rather than moving a secret family into my home. In truth, my dad's actions reflect that he doesn't truly care about how difficult this situation has been for me. It's as if he values his wife and her daughter's feelings more than mine. I appreciate your perspective and insights. Now, here's the second update. I spoke with my mother's previous lawyer, Amy, a fake name, about the issue on Saturday and inquired if there was a way to contest the will. Amy showed me the documents, indicating that my dad and I had both signed agreements stating that we were in accord with what was left to us and that we wouldn't contest it in the future. She also advised giving them a 30-day notice to find a new place and move out to avoid legal troubles related to the inheritance issue. So, the inheritance matter has been resolved. On Saturday night, I was supposed to have dinner with just my dad, but apparently, a private discussion between a father and daughter became a family affair with Steph and the twins present. To cut short the misery, I informed them that I had consulted Amy regarding the house and other legal matters, and that they had 30 days to find a new place and move out. Steph tried to object, but I shut her down, suggesting that we all go to family therapy and take some time to get to know each other. I rolled my eyes at the mere thought. I firmly stated that it had been months since they moved in, yet they hadn't made any effort to be a family unless they needed something. I had had enough, so I asked my dad if he was going with them or staying, indicating that his decision would determine which items he could take with him. He seemed confused, asking if I was kicking him out. I clarified that I wasn't, but wherever he decided to go, he would have to manage on his own. However, I made it clear that I wouldn't maintain contact if he chose to leave. Steph asked why I was evicting him from his own house, to which I replied that I inherited the house from my mother. There seemed to be a misunderstanding on their part, particularly with Lexi, who argued that it would be difficult to move since they were in the midst of finishing the spring semester and finals were just a few weeks away. I simply smiled and suggested they find a new place swiftly. After that, I left the conversation. On Easter Sunday, I invited my boyfriend, his family, and my two best friends over to celebrate. My dad had been calling me, and my brother had been answering his calls, inviting me to spend the day with them. However, as far as I'm concerned, the only family I recognize now are my two best friends, my boyfriend, and his family. It was a wonderful Sunday, filled with egg hunting, games, and a grand dinner, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Everything felt just right. Currently, I'm in the process of meticulously documenting every item in the house worth over $500. I had some people over to assist with this task. All the locks have been changed, and I've only given a copy to my boyfriend. No need to worry about my dad asking him for a key since my dad doesn't approve of him, given his middle-class background. I've also taken steps to enhance security by hiring professionals to install a security system around the house and property. Additionally, I have a meeting scheduled with someone to discuss the fences and gates. I haven't tapped into the funds my mom left behind, as I've been using them for college tuition, dorm expenses, and other needs. However, given the urgency of the situation, I believe it's time to access those funds. All the family pictures and portraits are currently in storage, and other smaller valuables are stored in a safety deposit box. Important documents are kept in a water and fireproof safe that requires both a key and a pin to open, and it's situated in my room. I'm taking every precaution and advice that you've provided in the comments on my previous post. Thank you for your valuable suggestions. So, for now, that's the update. I'm not entirely sure why my dad is choosing to be with them rather than me, his own flesh and blood. I've come to accept that, for some unknown or unexplainable reason, they are more important to him. It's challenging, as he's the only family I have left here, and I'm not particularly close to his side of the family. However, once they move out, I plan to cut contact with him. He's a grown man and can decide what he wants to do with his life. I appreciate all the support and well wishes. Thank you for your encouragement. You're doing a great job, and it's essential not to let your dad manipulate you or lie to get his way. He made his choice, and you shouldn't allow him to weasel his way back into your life. Don't be surprised if some emergency or crisis comes up in the future, as that's a common tactic some families use to regain access. Stay strong and true to your decisions. I cut ties with them 3 years ago. In the past month alone, there have been relentless attempts to drag me back into their chaos. First, there was the pressure to get tested for some unspecified issue when my grandpa needed blood due to a rare problem. Then my grandma had a minor stroke with no lasting damage, but it was blown out of proportion. My sister wanted a divorce, and my parents were unhelpful, leaving me to handle the emotional fallout alone. Now my mom is bombarding me with frantic voicemails about my sister needing support, all while my grandpa battles pneumonia or congestive heart failure. He's 19, his health is deteriorating, and I feel helpless. They paint me as a heartless monster for not caring, but every manufactured crisis has made me numb. They create emergencies, ensuring things can never get better, providing an excuse to stay in my life. I'm doing my best to document everything. You're absolutely right. These people will invent insane reasons to crawl back into my life. Mom might manipulate Dad's decisions by withholding intimacy, forcing him to choose her over me. It's sad how some people prioritize their desires over their children's well-being. I agree. It's time for me to focus my energy on my boyfriend and his family. My dad's blindness to my feelings before making major decisions is disappointing. While I'm an adult, if he's my only family, one would think he'd make wiser choices. I've seen worse situations on various platforms, like husbands leaving their wives for mistresses, so I should be able to handle this. I just hope my boyfriend isn't taking advantage of me. I should consider a prenuptial agreement to safeguard my interests. It's become apparent that she assumed my dad's house was her own, which is why she asked me to give up my room for her convenience. She underestimated my resolve, but it was a crafty move. Kudos to her. But this situation feels like a twisted version of Cinderella, where everything goes right for her, but not for the wicked stepmother and stepsisters. Boycotting contact after my dad moves his new family out seems necessary. He married her without considering my feelings, and he should have provided them with their own place from the start. Perhaps that could have salvaged our relationship. If he genuinely wanted to be a father to me, he should have stood up for me and his late wife against his new family's disrespectful behavior. Instead, he's shifting the burden onto me, and that's not how a parent should act. My older brother, a 30-year-old male, pursued higher education and later worked as an accountant in the city. Meanwhile, I, a 27-year-old male, started working for my dad as a plumber at the age of 15. I attended college to obtain qualifications in plumbing and gas. Around the time the pandemic began, my brother moved back from the city and joined my dad, who was 55 years old at the time, in our family plumbing business. Unfortunately, my dad's health had deteriorated due to asbestosis, rendering him unable to work effectively. Despite his declining health, he continued to work alongside me on Fridays, even though I had taken over the business operations for the past 2 years. During the pandemic, we faced challenges initially, but we managed to bounce back. We expanded our business, now operating 50 vans, each with 1 qualified and 1 trainee plumber. However, last month, my dad announced his decision to step down from the business due to his health. To my dismay, he handed over the business to my brother and asked me to relinquish my role as the acting CEO. This decision deeply upset me, especially considering my long-standing dedication to the business. In the beginning, it was just my dad and me, as my brother had no interest in joining the family business, dismissing it as unworthy of his time. Now he was suddenly the boss, despite lacking knowledge of our trade. I confronted my dad about his choice, but he justified it by pointing out my brother's family responsibilities and university education. Many of our employees were also unhappy with this decision, expressing their intention to leave if I did. Faced with this situation, I decided to leave the family business and start my own. Despite the hurtful messages and criticisms I received, I expressed gratitude to those who supported me. My plan was to reach out to our large clients, hoping to take over projects that had been postponed due to the pandemic. I'd also had the support of 20 colleagues willing to work with me. With my savings from the past 12 years, I believed I had enough to start my own business and stand on my own feet. Despite the challenges, I was determined to make my new venture successful, although I couldn't help feeling guilty about competing with my family. You shouldn't have to endure this injustice. They not only took the business away from you, but also from all the loyal employees who don't want to work under an inexperienced CEO. It's not just about you, Hall. It's about everyone affected by this decision. Your father could have split the business 50-50, with your brother handling the accounting side and you managing production. I would suggest offering this solution to your father. If he refuses, I would advise cutting all contact and blocking relatives. In your shoes, I would start my own business and never look back. Your brother turned his back on the family business while you poured your heart and soul into building it. Honestly, I thought your brother's return would unite us all into one big family company. It's heartbreaking that your father allowed this to happen, especially the significant pay cut you had to endure. This clearly shows how he values you compared to your brother. I am truly sorry for what you're going through. I hope you find the strength to run your brother's business out of the market. Thank you for your support. The most difficult part is that my brother agreed to the pay cut. I was still earning a decent wage, but it felt like a betrayal. I'd always believed my father would divide the business between us, not leave me on the sidelines after everything I did to build it. Now for an update. I want to make it clear that I don't intend to start a business with the purpose of destroying my brother. Despite my anger, I've invested almost 13 years in this business, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job or witness the downfall of the company. It's currently 5 a.m. in England, and your support has been invaluable. I plan to talk to my father around 8 a.m. I'll take him out for breakfast to have an honest conversation. I'm not sure if I'll get the answers I seek, but I love my family and want my future kids to know them. I'll update you all after today's events. Second update. As I mentioned in one of the comments, I believe my family has found my post, and they confirmed it this morning when I arrived at my parents' house. My mom greeted me with tear-streaked eyes, and my dad and I went out for breakfast to talk. He didn't utter a word during the drive there. Upon our arrival, and then again on the way back, he asked if we could pull over to talk. It was the first time I had ever seen my dad cry. When I confronted him, asking why he had done this to me, he confessed he didn't know. I pressed him, and he finally revealed that he felt he owed it to my brother for not being there for him as much as he was for me during our upbringing. There were moments my brother needed him, but we were always working. I couldn't fathom it. After 12 years of relentless dedication, this was his justification. I told my father that I had invested half my life working for the business, and now he was sidelining me just because my brother had returned. It hurt me in ways I couldn't express. To my surprise, he wasn't angry when he discovered the post I had shared. Instead, he seemed remorseful. He admitted that my mother was devastated after reading the comments about how badly they had treated me. She believed I would never talk to them again. My dad acknowledged that he should have split the business between us, realizing that it would require both of us to keep progressing. He apologized for never expressing how proud he was of everything I had achieved. He understood my brother would never agree to a 50-50 arrangement. He pleaded for me to return, saying my brother would need me, but I replied that it was no longer my concern. I tried to make it work for 3 weeks after my demotion and pay cut, but my brother refused to listen, dismissing my expertise. So I left. My dad broke down, confessing that he had torn the family apart and regretted what he had done. I couldn't fathom why it took him so long to realize my value in the company. In the third update, I had several successful Zoom calls with clients, and they informed me they would be sending proposals for upcoming work. Fortunately, the start dates didn't clash, a concern that had weighed heavily on my mind. 3 of my experienced colleagues had left my previous workplace and chose to join me voluntarily, an affirmation that touched me deeply. At this point, I had everything I needed to start my new business, 3 vans, and the tools I had amassed over the years. Then my father called and invited me over for dinner. Uncertain but hopeful, I accepted, thinking it might be a step in the right direction. When I arrived, my entire family was present. The atmosphere was tense. My mother avoided eye contact, and my brother acted as if I didn't exist. My dad asked both my brother and me to join him in his office. He began questioning when I would return to the company, stating that they needed me back early Monday morning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them both that I wouldn't be returning, that I had started my own business. I questioned my brother, asking what he meant by we, considering he was the one who had been given the business. My brother lost his temper, demanding to know why I would leave if I truly cared about the company. I didn't hold back, expressing my frustration. I reminded him that I had dedicated 12 years of my life to make the company successful, just like him. Unlike him, I didn't seek all the glory, and I wouldn't allow myself to be treated poorly. I told him to leave so I could talk to Dad. I confronted my father, asking him about his apology earlier in the day and why he expected me to return despite everything. He couldn't meet my gaze. I said my goodbyes to my cousins, nieces, and nephews and walked out. I spent about 3 hours writing, finding solace before returning here to share my thoughts. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for the personal messages, comments, rewards, and all the encouraging words. I'll try to respond to everyone, but I'm exhausted and will likely fall asleep. In the 4th update, it's been a while since I last shared. I've had a lot going on in the past few weeks. The new business is thriving. We have plenty of work and are making good money. At the year's end, I plan to expand, and I couldn't be happier about that. My fiancé and I are overjoyed. She's busy planning our dream wedding, although she wants me to wear a suit. I insist on my kilt. Waking up next to her every day brings me immense happiness. She's been my rock through everything. Regarding my family, my father and brother still refuse to talk to me. They declared they won't attend our wedding, even though they haven't been invited. My mother contacts my fiancé, asking about wedding details but won't talk to me. On the brighter side, my fiancé's family has been incredible, helping with the lawsuits, assisting with wedding preparations, and much more. I am deeply thankful for their support. Other members of my family have backed off, apologized, and expressed a desire to make amends for the hurtful things that were said. My fiancé and I have decided to have our wedding in November. After we're married, we plan to try for children. We're both excited about becoming parents. The next story revolves around my business and the decision not to split control equally between my children. I'm a 65-year-old electrician from Germany, looking forward to settling down, traveling with my wife, and spoiling our grandchildren for the rest of our lives. I have built up a small business with 23 employees. My son, Alexander, who is 36 years old, will take control of it. I also have 2 daughters whom I am proud of. Laura, 34, has a master's degree in biochemistry, and Marie, 30, is a middle school teacher in mathematics and sports. Recently, I shared my plan of family gathering. Laura was supportive, but Marie accused me of favoritism, which I denied. I explained that Alexander had worked with me for 17 years, starting as a trainee and eventually earning his master's license as an electrician. He has demonstrated passion, dedication, and leadership, training 7 of our employees along the way. My daughters were offered opportunities to work with me during school holidays, but they pursued their own careers, which my wife and I supported financially and emotionally. I sought opinions on Reddit, asking if I was in the wrong. Most responses were in favor of my decision to leave the business to Alexander. People pointed out that hard work should be rewarded, emphasizing that he had invested his time and energy in the business and had helped make it successful. They agreed that leaving the business to him was a way to ensure stability for our employees and their families. Additionally, they acknowledged that it was my business and my money, and I had the right to decide who should inherit it. German law might have different views, but the consensus was that my choice was justifiable. In this situation, it's crucial for your uncle and cousins to consult a lawyer, as there might be legal costs involved in compensating his other children when he decides to pass the company to only one child. It's not being in a hole, it's just practical business sense. Marie may lack experience in this industry or running a business, which makes your son, Alexander, the most qualified candidate, given his 17 years of dedicated work with you. Marie's bitterness appears to stem more from Alexander's close relationship with you than from the handover of the business. It's worth considering that both Marie and Alexander had equal opportunities. They could have chosen to pursue a career as an electrician, but only Alexander followed through. It's unfair for Marie to resent the situation based on her own choices. As for your last story, about your inheritance, you're not the whole for not splitting your inheritance equally with your cousins. Your paternal grandmas will specify the distribution of her money among her grandchildren, not anticipating the number of children your dad and uncle would have. Your parents are right in asserting that it's your money, and you should be the one to decide how to handle it after gaining access to it. The accusations of selfishness are unwarranted, especially considering the unique circumstances that led to the uneven distribution. Your upbringing and your parents' financial decisions are entirely unrelated to the situation at hand. I had to buy my own car, while my cousins had theirs bought for them by their parents. My dad's aunt constantly fueled my uncle's belief that my dad was the favorite child, which left my uncle resentful. He now uses the fact that I'm receiving more money to support that idea. I refuse to split the money because it's rightfully mine. The inheritance was meant for the children of my dad, and it's not my fault that my parents had only one child. My parents taught me financial responsibility, and I plan to put most of the money into a lifetime ISA. I intend to use some of it to travel after university and invest the rest wisely. I'm not planning on squandering it all in one go. Furthermore, Connor and Olivia's shares are substantial, far more than most people inherit and more than many have access to in their early 20s. Connor has already spent most of his inheritance on partying, traveling, and cars, so I don't see why I should have to compensate for his choices. Regarding the messages I've received, I want to clarify that my grandma did not exclude my dad and uncle. She only left the money from her various bank accounts to the grandchildren. Her other assets, such as property, jewelry, art collection, and investments, were divided between them. To those who say I'm being selfish, I firmly believe that my decision aligns with my grandma's wishes. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Would they willingly share their inheritance? I don't think so. This is a fair, but not equal, situation. My grandmother was fair by splitting the money 50-50 between her son's descendants. It's their entitlement and not a matter of greed. Anyone questioning it can express their concerns at her grave. After being disowned by my family over 8 years ago, they've reached out to invite me, my 27-year-old wife, and another female acquaintance for Christmas. I've received a mix of advice from friends, with one suggesting I turn to this online community for insight. I'm a 25-year-old male, the youngest of 4 kids born to my 52-year-old mom and 54-year-old dad. My siblings, whom I'll refer to as Michael, 31, male, Sarah, 28, female, and my twin brother Carl, 25, male, all excelled in physical sports. My dad was a star basketball player at Editsu School. My mom played volleyball. Michael excelled in soccer, Sarah in softball, and Carl was the star running back on the football team. I, on the other hand, showed an early interest in archery, which my family regarded as a wimpy sport. They seldom attended my events, and I often had to plead for their presence. Between the ages of 14 and 16, I participated in around 20 archery tournaments, while my parents only showed up to one. Though I wasn't neglected, they were emotionally distant, leaving me feeling overshadowed by my siblings. When I tried to address this, they labeled me an attention seeker. However, my discernment wasn't related to these issues. At 15, I began dating Amy, who was also 15 at the time. We introduced her to my family, and they liked her. However, almost 2 years later, one of Amy's former friends revealed that she had been cheating on me with an unnamed guy. Confronting her, she confessed that it was my twin brother, Carl. She claimed her feelings for him had surpassed those for me. Enraged, I confronted Carl at home, resulting in a physical altercation where I punched him and knocked him out. Although my violent reaction was regrettable, it was the culmination of years of resentment toward him and my family. To avoid legal consequences, my family agreed not to press charges against me. Instead, I was sent to live with my estranged paternal aunt, who lived 2 hours away and was 48 years old at the time. Since then, I've had no contact with my immediate family. Initially challenging, I've managed to move forward with the support of my aunt and her 48-year-old husband, gradually letting go of the desire to mend the broken relationship with my family. I transferred to a different high school and eventually attended a university in my aunt's city, where I graduated as an electrical engineer. Later, I met my wife and married her. When it came time to plan our wedding, I considered inviting my estranged family, but I decided against it to avoid any potential drama. My wife and I purchased a house an hour away from my aunt's place, and we were blessed with a daughter about a year ago. Recently, I received a Facebook message from my parents expressing a desire to reconnect over Christmas at their house. I told them I'd think about it as I might have other plans, but promised to provide a clear answer soon. In the meantime, both Michael and Sarah sent me friend requests on social media, which felt rather strange. My wife, who is 2 months pregnant, suggested that if I chose to go, she and our daughter would spend Christmas at her father's house to avoid unnecessary stress. I agreed with her, considering her well-being. My dilemma is whether to go and attempt to reconcile with my family or not. I'm torn on what to do. On one hand, it's possible they feel remorse for what they did to me and want to apologize. On the other hand, there's the fear that if I go, they might pressure me to apologize to Carl, something I'm not willing to do. Any advice on this matter would be greatly appreciated. Top advice before reading the update. I think you should go another time. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Visit your family at a less stressful time to see if they have any ulterior motives. It might just be about them wanting to see their grandchildren and not necessarily about you, which would be hurtful to you. Yeah, I agree. Go another time. I was thinking the same thing. It could be related to the grandkids. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Christmas is too big of an event to meet them. Also, please update us. I can't get this post out of my head. I can't imagine a parent kicking out their child who was betrayed by their other child. They might want to reconnect due to money or their grandchild. I don't know, but it's weird that even his siblings texted OP. I hope it's for good reasons, though. I wouldn't consider spending Christmas away from my pregnant wife for them. Maybe I'm missing something, but why choose Christmas to reach out? They could have contacted me at any time and given me the chance to choose a convenient time to reconnect. They're the ones trying to mend things, so their timing seems odd to me. I personally wouldn't go unless you truly want them back in your life. The situation seems fishy to me. It's possible they found out about my successful child and are now attempting to heal the family image to avoid looking like they abandoned their son years ago. It feels like a trap. I noticed they didn't open with any remorse or sign of an apology. They might want something from me: money, free work, an organ, or access to my children. Or maybe they just want to appear good to their friends. I'm not saying don't go, but keep your expectations low. Be prepared for them to ask me to do something for them in order to reconcile properly and have a quick exit strategy ready. As a parent, I can't fathom going no contact with one of my children for 8 years, especially after the other child did something so cruel to them that they had to resort to hitting them. It's inconceivable to me. I would understand if my son hit his brother under such circumstances. We're all human, and moving past the fact that they abandoned me and turned their backs for 8 years is my choice. Personally, I'm not sure if I could. If I can't or don't want to see them again, I doubt anyone would blame me. If they do blame me, they don't know the full story. And if they do know the full story and still blame me, they're not worth my time either. Now for the update. I wanted to post earlier, but some things got in the way. 2 days after Christmas, my wife began experiencing unbearable pain in her abdomen area. She could hardly stand on her 2 feet. Her sister and I rushed her to the hospital, where we learned that my wife had suffered a miscarriage and that the fetus had to be removed right away. The worst part for me was explaining to my wife what had happened. Due to complications surrounding the operation, my wife had to stay in the hospital for 2 more days. I've been trying to stay strong for my wife and daughter, but honestly, I'm struggling right now. As for the updates on the original post, most of you who commented on the same day advised me not to spend Christmas with them due to the significance of that holiday. I agreed with the advice and decided to spend the rest of the holidays with my wife. When I texted my family, stating my decision, I expected them to argue with me. Surprisingly, they responded by saying they respected my opinion and looked forward to seeing me after the holidays. Curiosity got the best of me, and I started digging into my family to understand why they had reached out after all these years. I found out that Michael is a corporate lawyer working for a major company in our hometown, married with 2 daughters. Sarah, on the other hand, appeared to be married to a doctor and had a son. 8 years ago, she was studying to be a nurse. My friend, whose parents were friends with mine, informed me that Sarah had divorced her first husband, the one she was dating 8 years ago, due to mail fraud. Carl, my twin, married Amy right after high school, and they have 2 kids. I couldn't pinpoint their exact occupations, but the fact that they bought a big house last year suggested they were financially stable. My dad seemed to be going through a midlife crisis, while my mother was heavily involved in the wellness community. I tried to analyze why they might want to reconnect. One possibility was money, but considering my siblings' financial stability, that seemed unlikely. Another suggestion was organ donation, although it didn't make sense given that Carl, my likely match as my twin, was seen skiing in a Facebook post just a week before Christmas. Then there was the matter of my daughter. They might be reaching out to have a relationship with her. Although she wasn't their first granddaughter, I suspected they found out about her through my wife's public Facebook account. My next step was to contact my estranged aunt, the one who took me in, and inform her about the situation. She explained to me why my grandparents had disowned her. After college, she came out as bisexual and started dating her girlfriend, leading to immediate dissownment. However, about 4 years ago, my grandpa began to reconnect, and recently, he had been inquiring about me, my life, marriage, and whether I had kids. My aunt's response was swift and confrontational. She directly challenged my grandpa for his sudden interest in my life, particularly after he had supported Carl for his actions. That's when the whole situation took a surprising turn. Grandpa explained that he believed I deserved to be estranged because, according to him, I had cheated on Amy with one of her close friends. He viewed cheating as a grave offense due to his religious beliefs. According to my family's version of events, the friend who I allegedly cheated with confessed to Amy, who then sought comfort from Carl and Sarah. When I learned about this, I confronted Carl and Sarah, attacking them brutally. Sarah, who had attempted to mediate between me and Carl, was unharmed during the confrontation. Hearing this revelation from my aunt left me in shock. I couldn't fathom the depths of their animosity, leading them to concoct such a terrible lie about me. Later, my aunt disclosed the whole truth to Grandpa, who was utterly shocked as he had always believed Carl to be a good kid. Grandpa then demanded my aunt to provide my phone number, but she refused. I eventually uncovered the real reason my parents and siblings had reached out to me. It turned out Grandpa had given them an ultimatum. Either they apologize for their past mistreatment and invite me to the family Christmas dinner, or they would be cut off from his vast fortune. He was a multimillionaire, and their financial greed motivated their sudden interest in reconciling. Instead of seeking genuine reconciliation for their past wrongdoings, they were driven by selfish motives. After learning the truth from my aunt, I decided to cut all ties with them. Why should I respond to people who only valued me for the potential inheritance they could gain? In my eyes, they were all dead to me. I had a supportive wife to care for, a family that respected and loved me, and supportive in-laws who were there for us. However, the story didn't end there. 3 days after New Year's Eve, I received an unexpected call on my work phone from an unknown number. Despite being accustomed to such calls due to my career, I picked up, only to hear my grandfather's voice on the other end. He must have obtained my number from my company's website. Surprisingly, his first words were an apology for not attempting to contact me over the past 8 years. He expressed his apologies for missing significant milestones in my life, such as my graduation, wedding, and the birth of my daughter. Frankly, I hadn't been particularly close to him before, so his decision to cut me off financially didn't affect me deeply. As our conversation continued, he revealed his disgust for the rest of my family and stated that he was cutting them off as well, adding me to the list. I found myself conflicted about this news. While the money would undeniably be helpful, I didn't want him to manipulate the situation to force a relationship between me and my daughter. Our conversation lasted about half an hour, during which I began to think that perhaps I could build a genuine connection with my grandpa. However, my feelings changed abruptly when he made a comment that infuriated me. He expressed disappointment that my daughter hadn't taken the family name. To provide some context, after marrying my wife, we discussed using her last name for our future children due to legal constraints preventing me from adopting her name. We made this decision together as a couple. At that moment, I couldn't contain my anger and let loose on my grandpa. Labeling him as a senile old man and hurling hurtful words, I made it clear that I never wanted him to contact me again. The audacity of his comment, considering what I had gone through, was beyond infuriating. I resolved not to let him use any potential inheritance to control me. Even if I received the money, my plan was to donate it to a local charity. However, given his history of empty promises, this outcome seemed unlikely. The past few weeks had been incredibly challenging for me. My wife had taken measures to protect our privacy by privatizing her Facebook account, and my in-laws had done the same. How my estranged family planned to contact me remained a mystery, although I suspected they might resort to extreme measures, perhaps even hiring a private detective. As far as I knew, they didn't have information about where I currently lived, but one could never be too certain. I've considered getting a restraining order, but it's complicated given the presence of lawyers in the family. I didn't get the chance to answer some questions from my last post before it was inexplicably deleted. I'll try my best to respond to any questions over the next day or two, but after this, I won't be using the site for a while. Thank you all for your advice, and I wish you the best in this new year. I am profoundly sorry for your loss, OP. I can't even begin to fathom the pain you and your wife must be enduring. Your family's behavior is beyond belief. Their audacity knows no bounds. They don't deserve any more of your time and energy. Forget about them. I genuinely hope they don't bother you anymore, allowing you to focus on your family at home. Thank you for taking the time to update us. Please accept my condolences. I hope your wife recovers soon. Your family has faced some difficult weeks, but don't let these people get to you. Regarding your grandpa's comments about the last name, at least the truth is out, exposing their true colors. Let your grandpa keep the money if it comes your way before you make any decisions. Take your time and think it over calmly. You've chosen wonderful people as your family, your wife, daughter, and in-laws. They are the ones who truly matter. The rest of them can go to hell. I'm sorry for all you've been through and the loss of your child. Remember, you have a family that loves and supports you. You are wanted and cherished by them, even if your parents and siblings don't see it. Please seek professional support and help for yourself and your wife. You've been through a lot, and it's crucial to have the right support. As for the situation with your granddad, it might have convinced him that your aunt's claims were false, especially since they tried to portray you as unstable. While you had every right to be offended, you may have acted impulsively. I understand you've been through a lot, and this might have been the final straw for you. It's just a different perspective to consider. Sending you love and strength. I genuinely hope your wife gets better soon, and I hope the new year brings positive changes for you. At the end of the day, how your granddad perceives you shouldn't matter. A relationship based on money isn't genuine. This might affect the relationship your aunts and grandpa have, but truthfully, they never really had a meaningful relationship to begin with. In my formative years, my bond with my mother was unbreakable. We shared countless moments, from movie nights to weekend baking sessions. However, as I matured, our relationship underwent a seismic shift when my mother remarried. Suddenly, everything seemed to unravel. Her new husband brought his own children into the picture, crowding our already cramped two-bedroom apartment. Space became a luxury, and in an attempt to accommodate everyone, my mother made a heart-wrenching decision. She packed my belongings into trash bags and discarded them. The sight of my cherished memories, reduced to refuse, left me utterly devastated. My eyes fell upon the remnants of my past life. Photo albums, trophies, posters, and mementos that once adorned my walls. It was a painful realization that all I held dear had been callously tossed aside. I felt a profound sense of betrayal. How could my mother erase my existence, my accomplishments, my treasures? Fueled by a mix of anger and desperation, I confronted her, demanding an explanation for her cruel actions. In a fit of rage, I hurled hurtful words at her, questioning her choices and priorities. Regret washed over me, but at that moment, my anguish drowned out reason. In the aftermath of our heated confrontation, I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. The house that had once been my sanctuary now felt hostile and unwelcoming. Determined not to surrender my rightful place, I retrieved my discarded belongings from the trash. With unwavering resolve, I reclaimed my space in the apartment, refusing to be displaced by my mother's new family. As I defiantly carried my belongings back into the apartment, I saw shock and disbelief etched on my mother's face. She tried to protest, insisting that I couldn't simply reclaim what was lost. Yet, I remained resolute. That house held the echoes of my entire life, and I wouldn't allow my mother's new family to strip me of my home. Upon returning to my room, I fervently unpacked my belongings, determined to restore the order and familiarity that had been ruthlessly disrupted. My mother, standing in the doorway, pleaded with me to stop, but my anger overshadowed any empathy I might have felt. I couldn't allow her to stand in my way. When she attempted to enter my sanctuary, I forcibly pushed her out and slammed the door shut, a gesture of defiance that startled even me. It was an unprecedented hostility directed at my own mother, but I felt she had abandoned me, choosing her new family over the bond we once shared. After that incident, communication between us became strained, laced with bitterness. I knew my actions had wounded her, but I couldn't summon the compassion to care. The house crackled with tension, aggravated by my stepfather's constant disparaging remarks about my presence in the house. I grew increasingly agitated, feeling my patience wear thin by the day. The breaking point arrived when my stepfather audaciously claimed my room for his children. I was incredulous. This man had already stripped away everything I held dear, and now he sought to take my last refuge. I confronted him, vehemently asserting that he couldn't barge in and seize my space. He dismissed my protests, citing my mother's agreement to his plan, and I seethed at the thought of my mother betraying me once more. Our confrontation escalated into a heated exchange of insults. I lashed out, labeling him a nobody who couldn't provide for his family without taking from others. In response, he accused me of being a selfish brat unable to accept change. In the end, I found myself defeated. my mother siding with him, urging me to compromise and make sacrifices for the sake of the family. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had already sacrificed too much. Fueled by anger and desperation, I threatened my mother and stepfather, vowing to teach them a lesson. Their shocked expressions didn't deter me. I stormed back to my room, slamming the door behind me, feeling utterly powerless and alone. Amidst my despair, a memory flickered to life. The two-bedroom apartment belonged to my paternal grandmother. She had entrusted it to my parents when they first moved to the city. In moments of desperation, she had always been my pillar of support, filling the gaps my mother couldn't. I picked up my phone, dialing her number. When she answered, I poured out the tale of my mother and stepfather's betrayal, seeking solace and guidance from the one person who had never let me down. I recounted the entire ordeal to my grandmother, explaining how my belongings had been discarded once again and how they were now attempting to take away my room. My grandmother's fury was palpable. Despite being out of the city, she promised to return in 2 days and confront my mother and stepfather, making it clear that they couldn't mistreat me without consequences. Relief flooded over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt supported, knowing I had someone willing to fight for me. As I hung up the phone, I anxiously awaited her arrival, uncertain about what lay ahead but hopeful that change was on the horizon. When the doorbell rang, I hurried to answer it. My grandmother stood there, her expression fierce, eyes ablaze with anger. She had always been my protector, and I knew she wouldn't allow anyone to harm me. I had held my ground for 2 days, refusing to let them take my room. As soon as she entered the apartment, she spotted my mother and stepfather, shock etched on her faces. Without warning, she slapped my mother hard, a sudden and shocking display of violence. My mother stumbled back, clutching her cheek. When my stepfather tried to speak, my grandmother swiftly struck him on the chest, his face draining of color as he realized the strength of the force he was dealing with. My grandmother scanned the small apartment, taking in every detail. She then turned to my mother and stepfather, announcing that she was the owner of the apartment and that I was her granddaughter. Fear gripped them as they comprehended the gravity of the situation. My grandmother lectured them sternly about their mistreatment of me, her words cutting through the tension in the room. A profound sense of relief washed over me. For the first time since my mother's remarriage, I felt someone was truly on my side, fighting for my cause. The air hung heavy with tension as my grandmother's stern voice echoed through the apartment. My mother and stepfather, seething with anger and indignation, were put in their place. But my grandmother wasn't finished. "You two should be ashamed of yourselves," she declared, her voice unwavering, demanding accountability for their actions. My grandmother's scolding cut through the room like a sharp blade. "How dare you treat your own daughter this way? Throw her out of her room. It's a disgrace," she admonished, her voice filled with righteous anger. When my mother attempted to speak, my grandmother silenced her with a raised hand. "No, I don't want to hear it. Pack up your things, then take your stepchildren and get out of my apartment. I don't want to see either of you again until you learn to treat your own blood with respect." Her words hit my mother and stepfather like a wrecking ball. They stared at her, mouths agape, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation. My mother tried to protest, explaining they had nowhere else to go, but my grandmother was resolute. With a look of fierce determination in her eyes, she stood her ground. "I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. You can't just throw away your daughter's things and expect everything to be okay. You need to learn how to be a better mother and a better person." My mother and stepfather seemed on the verge of arguing, but my grandmother shifted her gaze to me. With tenderness and concern, she assured me, "You're the only one who's staying here. I won't let them hurt you anymore. You're always welcome in my home." A whirlwind of emotions washed over me, relief, gratitude, and a twinge of guilt. My grandmother had taken a drastic step, kicking my mother and stepfather out of her home. Yet, I couldn't help but feel a sense of happiness at finally having someone in my corner. As my mother and stepfather hastily packed their belongings, their faces contorted with anger and disbelief, My grandmother turned to me and offered a small smile. She enveloped me in a warm embrace and said, "Don't worry, my dear. Everything is going to be okay now." It was a moment of triumph, orchestrated by my fiercely protective grandmother who saw the injustice and took decisive action to make things right. Despite the turmoil, I found solace in her unwavering support, knowing I wasn't alone in this battle. I toiled day in and day out, pouring my sweat and effort into my work, yet my contributions went unnoticed. My family seemed to revel in spending the money I earned, but there was never any appreciation, only a spotlight on my shortcomings. My sister, for reasons I could never fathom, was consistently jealous of me. She was indolent, uninterested in work, and conveniently blamed me for her own misdeeds. My parents, in turn, readily believed her accusations, scolding me without hesitation. Life was far from fair in our household. Each time an incident occurred, my parents would remind me that I was older, expected to be more mature and responsible, while she was allowed to get away with her behavior, creating a toxic atmosphere. This had become the norm in my life, a scenario perhaps not uncommon, but what followed was truly extraordinary. One day, a heated argument erupted between my sister and me when she took my favorite dress without permission and ruined it. She displayed no remorse, dismissing it as a trivial item. However, that dress held sentimental value. It was the first thing I had ever purchased for myself, with my hard-earned money. When I asserted that I wasn't her caretaker, she retorted that the family would always love her more, and she'd never have to work a day in her life. I didn't grasp the full meaning of her words until a few weeks later, when she stood before me, proudly announcing her teenage pregnancy. The family's reaction to this life-altering news was strikingly different from their response to my minor mistakes. It was glaringly evident that, regardless of her actions, they would unconditionally support her. Although they displayed momentary displeasure, they'd eventually embraced the idea, assuming it was my duty to not only take care of my sister, but also her unborn child. When I inquired about the baby's father, she evaded the question. On further pressing, she burst into tears, silencing any further inquiries. The burden of responsibility fell squarely on my shoulders, while my own needs and well-being were utterly disregarded by the very people who were supposed to care for me. I attempted to reason with them, but it became abundantly clear that my words fell on deaf ears. The breaking point came when my sister openly admitted, right in front of me, that she intentionally got pregnant to make my life a living nightmare. All the emotions I had suppressed surged to the surface, yet arguing with them seemed as futile as arguing with the wind. So I kept my peace for approximately 2 months, fervently seeking a job that would whisk me away from this suffocating environment. To my delight, it happened. I secured a job 800 miles away with excellent pay. However, the moment I shared the news of my move, my family's reaction was far from supportive. They expressed their anger, bombarding me with unnecessary questions about my responsibility and the baby's future. I couldn't comprehend why I, the sibling, was being held accountable for my sister's choices. While I was more than willing to assist them financially, their expectations had crossed a line. I couldn't sacrifice my entire life to be the sole caregiver for my sister's child. Despite my family's relentless efforts to sway my decision, from initial sweetness to outright yelling, I stood my ground. They resorted to emotional manipulation and gaslighting, trying to make me question my own judgment. I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly my fault, despite the fact that I had always gone above and beyond to help my family without expecting anything in return. Thank you for the supportive comments. Your encouragement means a lot. To those questioning why my teenage sister would intentionally get pregnant, expecting me to shoulder the entire responsibility, I'm just as puzzled. The most ironic part is that the father of the child was still in the picture, yet nobody expected him to step up. He was there, having lunch with my family, laughing and socializing. My family had this bizarre notion that my sister and her boyfriend were too young to handle such a significant responsibility, leaving me to foot the financial burden. I couldn't fathom why I should be responsible for their choices. They were perfectly capable of finding jobs and devising a plan to support their child if they chose to keep it. Why should I sacrifice my life for this mess? I have no clue about this guy's parents or what my sister is really up to. All I know is they're doing everything in their power to demotivate me, hoping I'll just give in and stay here. Hello, I'm updating after a whole 45 days, which I know is super late, but I have so much to share. I would have updated yesterday, but I faced some tech issues. You're talking to the new tech person from my family company. Just kidding. That wasn't a great first impression, but I'm proud of myself for landing this position. Speaking of the devil, my sister is apparently in her second trimester, indicating that she was pregnant long before she announced it, and intentionally so. My family was furious when they heard I was moving and tried everything possible to stop me, even attempting to create a scene at the airport. The audacity. They're acting like I'm some neglectful mother leaving her newborn behind, while the real mother, my sister, is being treated like a typical teenager who found herself in a difficult situation. Every time I think the drama is over, more keeps coming. My family is unhinged. I can't believe how unbothered they are about this situation, behaving as if my choice to work 800 miles away is just a rebellious phase. Adding to the chaos, my mom called me yesterday, suggesting I should adopt the baby once it's born and pose as the mother so my sister can restart her education without judgment for being a teen mom. It seems like everything my family does is for her. Just when I thought they couldn't do worse, they proved me wrong. I was so fed up that I told my mom straight away that I might not even want to come back, let alone adopt the kid. I've been clear that I won't take responsibility for my sister or her child, something I've repeated for a long time. Of course, my mom dismissed everything. Today, a friend called me, asking about my supposed pregnancy, a rumor spread by my family. I decided to put an end to this once and for all. I made an announcement on my social media page, exposing them completely. Yes, my family thinks I went overboard, but I simply don't care anymore. Am I the villain for this? I think not. I believe all of you are entitled to your opinion, but the way you wrote it, it's clear you'd never help your sister anyway. It's unfortunate that she's also problematic, but I can't blame just one person. I don't know how much patience God gives you all. If this situation is causing you so much trouble, cut them off. You can choose the middle ground. Your family has always treated you wrongly, so I'd say it's well-deserved. Why would you take care of the baby anyway? It's insane. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's stories. Remember, if you have a story to share, you can email us using the address in the description. If you'd like to be featured, please let us know, and we'll pin your comment at the top. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Oh, I messed up really bad and now I'm scared. You can call me Cindy, and I'm 23 years old. My boyfriend, Cameron, is 25. We're both from this tiny town in Oklahoma. We kind of knew each other because he was a bit older, but we weren't close. Around 3 years ago, we started talking more when he came back from college. He'd visit the grocery store where I worked. I was a cashier, and he'd always come to my line. He was always so nice and polite. I tried dropping hints that I liked him, but he didn't seem to get it. One day, when my line was slow, I finally got the courage to talk to him. I asked about his major, and we ended up chatting for about 10 minutes. He finally realized I was interested and gave me his number. I called him right after work, and we talked for hours. We went out to dinner that night and just clicked. We fell in love that weekend. Crazy, right? We started seeing each other every weekend. After he graduated, he got a great job in the city, bought a cool car, and got a nice apartment. A few months later, he asked me to move in with him. Even though our parents weren't thrilled about it, they supported us. Cameron said it was a test to see if we could handle living together before marriage. I was so happy. Living in the city was amazing. We both found good jobs, and I loved working at a coffee shop near our place. We made friends, and life was fun. We'd been living together for about 9 months when we started looking at other apartments just to see what else was out there. I also joined a yoga class nearby. There was this guy, Ed, who was always at the coffee shop and also came to the yoga class. He was older, in his late 40s, and really friendly. He was successful, drove a nice car, and dressed well. I got curious about yoga because he seemed so passionate about it, and I decided to talk to him one day. I asked Ed if he recommended the yoga studio he went to, and he said it's a good idea. So I decided to check it out myself. It was near our apartment, which was great. On the other hand, Cameron, my boyfriend, used a gym near his office, but it was far away and sometimes took forever to get there. I started going to yoga classes and really enjoyed them. After work, around 2 p.m., I'd head to the studio. This fit perfectly with my work schedule. I'd work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then do yoga until 3:30 p.m. After that, I'd go home and prepare dinner for Cameron. One day, Ed, the guy from the coffee shop and yoga class, asked how I liked the studio. I told him I loved it and thanked him for the recommendation. He mentioned that he might join classes around that time, particularly hot yoga, which started at 1:30 p.m. He also said he went to the gym for weightlifting and boxing a few days a week. A couple of days later, I bumped into Ed at the yoga studio. We talked like we always did at the coffee shop. Somehow, he convinced me to try a hot yoga class. I gave it a shot, and it turned out I really liked it. We started spending more time together, going to classes and stuff. Looking back, it wasn't the best idea. But at the time, I didn't really think about it. This went on for a few weeks until one day, I can't explain why, Ed and I ended up at Cameron's apartment on a Thursday afternoon. We made a terrible mistake, something I deeply regret now. I felt so guilty about it, but Ed suggested we meet at his place the following Monday to avoid disrespecting Cameron. Ed's apartment was in a dodgy neighborhood, sparsely furnished with just a few old chairs, a TV, a small table with 2 chairs, a simple double bed, and an old dresser. It wasn't what I expected, and I wished I had left in hindsight. But I didn't want to be rude. It turned out that Ed wasn't as well off as I thought. He spent his money on his car, clothes, and jewelry, not his living space. Afterward, I told Ed we needed to end our relationship because I loved my boyfriend and didn't want to mess up what we had. Ed cynically laughed and said, "You can't possibly love your boyfriend if you did what you did, can you?" I insisted that I did love Cameron, but Ed said my desire for him outweighed my feelings for Cameron by far. It was a harsh reality check for me. I gathered my stuff and left Ed's apartment, feeling tainted and incredibly foolish for what happened. It wasn't like me at all. I promise it's not. I can't explain why I did this with Ed. It happened during a time of the month when my hormones often feel uncontrollable. Though that's not an excuse. I'm just trying to make sense of my actions. I spent the rest of that day in tears until Cameron came home. We had dinner, watched TV, and relaxed, but Cameron seemed distant. He'd been feeling unwell, so I assumed it was because of that. On Tuesday, he still seemed off and distant. We hadn't been intimate for almost a week, which was unusual for us. Looking back, I think he might have known about Ed and me, which is why he was keeping his distance. On Wednesday, I got home just before 3 p.m., but my apartment key was missing from my key ring. I panicked, thinking it had broken off somehow, but all my other keys were still there. Then it hit me, Cameron had taken the apartment key. I tried calling and texting him, but there was no response, which was strange because he usually sent a quick text even when he was busy. I decided to go to the apartment office and ask for help. They had keys to all the apartments, so I explained my situation to one of the coordinators. They took me into the manager's office and closed the door. After a few minutes, they called me back in and asked me to sit down. The manager told me something shocking. Cameron had moved out that morning and left a letter to terminate the lease after its 1-year term. I couldn't believe it. I was devastated. They showed me the bags he left for me in their office, filled with my stuff and gifts I had bought for him over the years. It hit me that he must have known about Ed and me. and I fell apart in front of these kind ladies. They helped me carry the bags to my car and offered me water, snacks, and tissues. I sat in my car for over an hour, crying and trying to figure out what to do. I attempted to reach Cameron through calls and messages, but he didn't respond. I thought about staying in the vacant apartment until the lease ended, but he didn't reply to that either. I knew he was angry, but he hadn't blocked my calls, which gave me a glimmer of hope. I considered going to his office to talk to him, but I didn't want to cause a scene and risk his job. Instead, I drove around aimlessly for a while, unsure of where to go. Eventually, I checked into a hotel near our apartment, even though I couldn't afford it for long. I spent the night crying, wondering how Cameron had found out the truth. I hoped it was because Ed had told him, not because of hidden cameras in our apartment. The shame I felt was overwhelming. The next day, my mom called, furious after talking to Cameron's mother. She demanded to know what had happened, and I confessed. She yelled and screamed at me for over 45 minutes before hanging up abruptly. My dad expressed his deep disappointment in me too. I asked if I could move back home, and he agreed, but only if I sought professional help, like therapy. I accepted his condition, apologized again, and returned home 11 days later. During this time, I kept trying to contact Cameron, but he never replied. I read some advice suggesting that it's best to give a betrayed partner some space, even though it was tearing me apart inside. When I returned home, it felt like everyone in town knew about our breakup and why it happened. It was a total nightmare. I'm not sure how to reconcile with Cameron. I'm afraid he might never want to talk to me again. I love him deeply, and I know I have to try my best to win him back. No matter what happens, I'll carry the regret of my actions for the rest of my life. I'm back home now, living with my parents, and I've taken a job as a cashier at a dollar store. It seems like everyone in town is still talking about me, and I can't help feeling incredibly embarrassed. People somehow found out that Ed was the person I cheated with, and they did some online research. To my shock, I discovered that Ed is actually 62 years old, not in his late 40s as I thought. Even worse, he has a criminal record going back 17 years, with articles about his past arrests and trials still available online. I could have easily found all this information with a simple online search, but I was too distracted to do so. I still find it hard to believe how I acted during that time. I feel like a complete fool. Not only did I betray the man I love, but I did it with someone who's far from admirable. I hope the town's gossip will die down in a few months because I can't bear living here much longer. It's taking a heavy toll on my mental well-being. Some days, I contemplate locking myself in my room and not facing the world. My parents are deeply embarrassed by my actions, and they've made it clear that if I ever repeat something like this, they'll disown me without hesitation. They believe I've brought profound shame to the family, which has only intensified my feelings of self-disgust. I've been dealing with severe depression as a result. Throughout this entire ordeal, Cameron has not reached out to me. We haven't exchanged a single word since the night he locked me out of the apartment. I just wish he would pick up the phone and express his anger or any emotion. At this point, all I want is to apologize to him face to face. I've been in therapy for a couple of weeks now, and it's been helpful. My therapist is compassionate but also straightforward. Following her advice, I've refrained from trying to contact Cameron and have started focusing on self-improvement. She pointed out that I've already extended my apologies through text and voicemail, and Cameron is aware of it. But evidently, he wants nothing to do with me at the moment. Over the past week, I've concentrated on my job, maintained a healthy diet, gotten enough rest, and taken long walks. I do feel better, but I still miss my partner. I'm taking each day as it comes, hoping for a reconciliation with Cameron, but also preparing for the possibility that it may not happen. I have no intentions of dating anyone anytime soon, despite receiving requests from 4 customers at the store. My heart and mind are still firmly under Cameron's influence. I don't anticipate providing any further updates unless we manage to reunite. Best wishes, and thank you to all of you. I didn't get paid for my work, but we lived rent-free on our property, and I knew I'd inherit the majority ownership. It was a perfect family setup, and we all loved living here. My oldest was a 21-year-old girl, followed by a 20-year-old boy, a 17-year-old boy, and our youngest, a 15-year-old girl. Life was great, and my marriage with Connie was loving and happy. My job was good, and the farm was thriving. But about 3 years ago, my brother Bill got diagnosed with cancer. He didn't take care of himself well and only sought treatment when his symptoms got unbearable. He went through tough treatments, but he kept working. Sadly, Bill passed away earlier this year, and it was very emotional for all of us. Bill and I were close, and I helped him with various challenges he faced in life. Despite his issues, we loved him unconditionally. In Bill's will, he named me as the executor and left me 100% of his assets, including a bank account with over $70,000. I found something strange, though. Bill had set up this account with my youngest son, Joe, as the beneficiary. This confused me because Bill wasn't closer to Joe than my other kids. I wondered why Bill chose Joe, and it made me anxious. One day, I found 2 old photos of my wife, Connie, at Bill's house. They were inappropriate, and they were taken in Bill's bedroom. My world fell apart. I took the evidence to my parents, and they were as shocked and disgusted as I was. I decided to confront Connie. I took her to Bill's house, thinking we were just going to clean up. But when we sat down, I showed her the bank statement and the pictures. She looked at the statement, clearly surprised by the money Bill had saved. I knew there was much more to talk about, but I was devastated, and I needed time to figure out what to do. I asked Connie if she noticed anything odd on the bank statement, and she initially said no, just the amount. But then I urged her to read it aloud from the top. As she read, she saw Bill's name and the payable on death to Joe part, which made her realize that she was caught. I asked her if there was something she needed to confess, and she initially denied it, shaking her head. But after some persistence, she admitted to her affair with Bill 18 years ago. She explained that it was a stupid and selfish mistake that only lasted a couple of weeks. Connie claimed she had distanced herself from Bill since then, only interacting with him when other family members were around. I asked her if Joe was Bill's son, and she said no, she was certain he was mine, emphasizing that even if he wasn't, she considered him mine since I had raised him. I didn't show her any sympathy or comfort and left her to compose herself. After she cleaned up and came home, we slept in the same bed, but I refused her attempts to get close to me. The next day, I decided to divorce her, and I talked to my parents about it. They were shocked and couldn't believe what had happened. Connie begged me not to go through with it, but I was firm in my decision. Later, I met with a lawyer recommended by our farm attorney to begin the divorce process. We discussed the division of our assets and the possibility of spousal support due to Connie's lack of outside work. Money wasn't my main concern. I just wanted the marriage to end. I returned home and informed Connie of the attorney's advice, and she was upset. Then I told her I would talk to our kids about the situation that weekend, starting with Joe. He and I went to a creek on our farm, and I explained the situation to him. He was devastated and worried, especially about whether I would still love him if he wasn't my biological son. I assured him that I would always love him and that the issue was between his mother and me. The divorce was solely due to her affair and had nothing to do with him. We spent a couple of hours talking, and I mentioned that I would speak to his siblings next. After Joe told me he was ready to talk to his siblings, we all gathered by the pool, pretending everything was normal. However, my wife's odd behavior was evident, and our kids picked up on it right away. We spent the afternoon playing games, but the dark secret loomed. It was after dinner when Joe expressed his readiness to talk to his siblings. Unfortunately, they all had plans with friends that evening, so we decided to hold the conversation the next morning. As a family, we attended Sunday church services, returned home, and then I told the kids that I needed to speak with them privately on the back patio. My daughter inquired if their mom would be joining us, and I explained that she would meet with them later, causing some uneasiness among the kids. I shared the news with them, and their shocked reactions turned to disbelief, anger, and sadness. It was tough to see them process the information. I clarified my intention to divorce their mom, and they all started to cry. We had a lengthy conversation, and eventually they understood my decision. My daughter expressed her anger and reluctance to have anything to do with her mother. I informed them about getting DNA tests for each of them to determine their biological parentage, emphasizing that it wouldn't change my love for them, regardless of the results. That evening, their mom met with them to have an emotional conversation. I was outside but could overhear parts of their discussion. The kids expressed their love for her, but made it clear they would never see her the same way and might not forgive her for her actions, which was tough for her to hear. During the divorce process, my wife tried persuading me to stay together and seek counseling daily, but I remained firm. A significant offer was made to purchase the house my family lived in, and we decided to accept, moving out 60 days later. My wife moved to a nearby apartment and struggled with depression, requiring medication. I moved back to my parents' home temporarily and decided to build my dream log cabin on the farm. I now live there with my 2 youngest kids, while they spend a few nights a week with their mom. My ex-wife wants to reconcile, but I no longer have romantic feelings for her. After all the stress and drama, it turned out that all my kids are biologically mine, but it didn't change my feelings toward my ex-wife. Although I still care about her and want her to be happy, I can't trust her again. Despite everything, I feel content with where I am now and the relationships I have with my kids and my ex-wife. Sharing this story has provided some relief and gratitude for how things turned out, and I wish you all the best of luck. I'm a 31-year-old man who has been married to my wife, a 27-year-old woman, for nearly 3 years. We've been living together even before tying the knot, and our marriage has generally been a happy one. I've never questioned her loyalty because I've never had a reason to. We've had our fair share of disagreements, but nothing extreme. I was confident that if my wife were ever unhappy, she would communicate it to me. So it hit me like a ton of bricks when I stumbled upon a series of overly friendly messages on her phone one day. Her phone was on the dining table, and I had picked it up to bring it to her bedroom as she had requested. A notification lit up the screen, and I couldn't help but glance at it. There were messages from someone named Kara, and they were of a highly personal nature. I didn't know anyone named Kara, and the nature of those texts immediately raised my suspicions. I brought her the phone in the bedroom, and when she opened it, she asked if I had seen her notifications. I lied and said no, but she mentioned that it was just a notification for a kid's game and that she felt embarrassed I had seen it. I assured her that I hadn't seen anything and left her to her phone. However, I couldn't help but study her expressions because my doubts were now eating at me. She continued to text Kara with a smile on her face, which only fueled my unease. Unable to shake off my suspicions, I eventually left the room and told her I'd be sleeping in the living room, citing some work I needed to finish. She didn't even look up from her phone when I grabbed a pillow and headed to the couch. Restlessness consumed me as I couldn't stop thinking about those messages and the worst-case scenarios that were playing out in my mind. I had never considered the possibility that she would cheat on me, but now I had my doubts. I let it go that night, but the nagging feeling persisted. I began checking her phone whenever the opportunity arose. I needed to put my mind at ease to know the truth. I wanted desperately for it to be untrue. But then, one day, I saw another text from Kara. It contained a time and place, along with nicknames and emojis that resembled a date plan. I knew I should have confronted her, but I was so furious about her potentially ruining our seemingly perfect marriage that a simple confrontation didn't feel like enough. Instead, I decided to go to the specified place at the designated time. She arrived a bit late, and right in front of the cafe, she kissed the guy. A hello kiss, but a kiss nonetheless. It was the kind of kiss you give your husband when you return from work. I recognized the guy. He was her colleague. I had met him a couple of times when picking my wife up from her office. I knew his name, and I knew for a fact that he was married. I was torn between wanting to storm over and confront them both, to cry my heart out, and maintaining my composure. I chose the latter, hoping to give her a taste of her own medicine. I bided my time, and it was excruciating to be in the same house as her, eating dinner together, sharing a bed, and engaging in conversations about anything while I knew she was betraying me. But I remained patient, determined not to let her get away with it so easily. Our tradition of hosting game nights with friends every other month was the perfect opportunity to carry out my plan, and I organized everything, just as we always did. She was always competitive at games, so our game nights were something she looked forward to eagerly. When everyone arrived, we started playing Pictionary. In the midst of the game, just before it was her turn, I slipped a note into the jar. As she picked it up, her expression shifted from joy to confusion, and then embarrassment within seconds. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes, and in that moment, I decided to reveal everything I knew right there in front of our friends. Everyone was taken aback because, like me, they hadn't anticipated such a revelation from my wife. She pleaded with me to let her explain, and reluctantly, I agreed, curious about what excuse she would conjure. Through tears, she claimed I was jumping to conclusions, asserting that she was merely friends with her colleague. I remained calm, insisting she pack her bags and leave. Her demeanor changed swiftly. She admitted her mistake, but insisted it was unintentional. I couldn't fathom how infidelity could just happen without neglecting your spouse, but at least she acknowledged it. I calmly told her to leave, unable to bear her presence in my home any longer. I also informed her that I intended to speak to her colleague's wife, because he couldn't escape consequences either. Our friends, sympathetic to my situation, tried to console her. Despite my anger, I didn't want her to face this alone. Some friends offered her their guest rooms for the night, but she opted for a hotel. She accused me of humiliating her in front of everyone, insisting we talk when we were both calmer. Reluctantly, I agreed, even though I had little patience for her lies and fabrications at that moment. After she left, she persistently tried to contact me, but I ignored most of her calls and messages. I needed time to gather my thoughts. My wife had unraveled into a mess within a month. I did talk to her colleague's wife, who, too, had suspected her husband's infidelity. She revealed her plans to divorce him and suggested I do the same. I agreed, but it was far from easy. I had loved my wife for a long time, and we had been happy. We didn't have significant issues in our marriage, and yet she had chosen to betray us. About 2 weeks later, my wife, now living in a hotel, begged me to let her in and hear her out. I reluctantly allowed her inside, and she immediately burst into tears. She professed her love for me and admitted her mistake. When I asked how long the affair had been going on, she confessed it had lasted a year. My heart shattered, but my sorrow quickly turned to rage. I couldn't fathom why she had destroyed our otherwise happy marriage. She couldn't provide a single reason for her actions. She insisted on giving our marriage a second chance, but I was done. I told her to leave and not to contact me for a while. I needed time to think, to sort through the chaos she had caused. It's been 6 months since I asked my wife to leave. We've met a couple of times since, during which she apologized profusely, begging me not to divorce her. I was torn because I still loved her deeply. Ending our marriage was the right thing to do after her betrayal, but I couldn't find it in myself to move forward. Our marriage was in limbo. We lived separately, hardly speaking. I knew I had to end it officially because I couldn't trust her anymore. The trust I had once placed in her was irreparably shattered. She kept assuring me she wouldn't repeat her mistake, urging me to trust her again. I was considering giving her another chance when I received an email from her colleague's now ex-wife. She claimed my wife and her ex-husband were still in contact. I desperately hoped she was wrong, hoping my wife couldn't be that cruel. I asked my wife to meet, and, as usual, she began with apologies. I confronted her about her ongoing communication with the man she had the affair with. She hesitated, and in that moment I knew the truth. I urged her to be honest, and she confessed they had spoken when he was going through his divorce. She insisted they were just friends, but the little trust I had left vanished. With that admission, I realized I could never trust her again. There was no point in staying in a marriage where trust and unconditional love were lost. I informed her to expect divorce papers soon. She could take anything she still had in the house. Despite her tears and pleas, there was no other option. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, relieved to finally end the turmoil, but saddened by the loss of what was once a loving relationship. Thankfully, we didn't have children. It made the process a little less painful. She left quietly, and although I didn't care if she went back to that man, I needed to let her go to move on with my life. I should be informed beforehand and not find out when I walk through the door. I expressed my concerns, feeling unsettled about the situation. My wife seemed dismissive, telling me I was overreacting and that my brother needed a place to stay temporarily. The next day, I decided to have a conversation with my wife about boundaries. I explained that while I understood she wanted to help my brother, I needed to be part of the decision-making process, especially when it involved our home. She countered, saying that it was just a temporary situation, and I shouldn't make a big deal out of it. I insisted that communication and mutual respect were essential in our relationship, and that decisions like these should be made together. As the discussion continued, my wife became defensive, insisting that she was just being supportive and didn't see the need for my involvement. I emphasized the importance of boundaries in maintaining a healthy marriage and family dynamic. We talked through our concerns, trying to find a compromise that respected both our relationship and my brother's situation. In the end, we agreed that in the future, we would discuss such matters before making decisions that affected our home life. While my initial reaction might have been perceived as an overreaction, the conversation allowed us to establish clearer boundaries and strengthen our communication as a couple. I firmly believed that I should have been the one to decide whether my brother stayed over. He had no right to call my wife and intrude without my consent. I insisted that he should have waited for my call, and I planned to talk to him about it in the morning. However, my wife brushed off my concerns, telling me to grow up and accept that he was always welcome in our home. Now my wife is furious with me, and I find myself stuck with my brother in the house, unsure of how long he'll be staying until he figures out his life. Already having 2 teenagers, I felt overwhelmed having another person, especially my adult brother, residing with us. I stood my ground, believing that he shouldn't be here, but my wife remained upset with me. Am I the jerk for asserting that she shouldn't have picked up my brother and allowed him to stay at our house? Update. I don't believe it makes me a bad person to think that an 18-year-old should be independent and not rely on family support. I expect the same for my children. They are supposed to have a job and save money to move out after graduating from high school. If they go to college, they can stay, but they are expected to pay for it themselves and contribute a small amount in rent. My wife doesn't agree with this and believes our children can stay as long as they need. I'm trying to help her see reason. As a child, I was never taken to zoos, museums, or out to eat. I went to a public school and wasn't allowed to participate in sports or activities due to financial constraints. I had to get a job as soon as I could. My parents were 16 when they had me, and even when they got older and had more money, I still didn't receive the opportunities my brother had. My brother received the best, while I got nothing. It's time for him to stand on his own. Yes, my children enjoyed activities like going to the zoo, parks, and museums, as well as participating in sports. However, those privileges were for my kids, not my brother. I couldn't understand why my wife would include him in these experiences. My brother has always regarded her as another mother, so I had to share her with him. Last night, when I got home from work, everyone was preparing for dinner. After the meal, I asked my kids to go to their rooms so I could talk to my brother and wife. I questioned my brother about his presence and why he felt the need to involve us instead of dealing with his issues independently. He explained that he needed to escape his home environment. He had just discovered that his girlfriend had cheated on him and was planning to leave. She blamed him for not marrying her or having a baby, which she desired deeply. I told my wife that what she wanted wasn't unreasonable and that my brother was being immature. I argued that if he could live with his girlfriend, he could marry her. My wife countered, saying that not everyone wants to be married and have children at such a young age, reminding me that he was an adult who needed to grow up. I expressed my displeasure with them making decisions without me and explained that this situation could have been resolved the next morning. There was no need for anyone to drive 2 hours or run away from home. I inquired when my brother planned on leaving, and he informed me that his girlfriend was moving out by Sunday, after which he would go back home. He still had 2 months left on the lease, so he intended to look for a smaller place to move into. I shared my reservations about him staying for that extended period, but my wife defended him, insisting he was my brother and a few days wouldn't hurt anyone. Reluctantly, I agreed, although I made it clear that I didn't like it. I felt cornered and uncomfortable with the situation, but I didn't want to make a bigger issue out of it. I still believed he needed to go home and deal with his problems independently. My brother thanked me, and we parted ways. My wife and I continued to discuss the matter, both feeling discontented with one another. "You're the jerk," she said. "He's an adult." Then another person chimed in. "Or are you leaving out a ton of info? You have some minor points. I don't like people staying at my house either, but it isn't just your house, and it's family. You didn't specify that there was a horrible drama or anything. Your post comes off as controlling and unpleasant." The discussion continued, with varying opinions. Some believed I was in the wrong, while others saw my point of view. It was clear that this situation had caused tension between my wife and me. The situation turned grim in 2020 when I lost my job due to having to homeschool our kids. We couldn't afford the rent, and 6 months later, we were evicted. My mother-in-law, who initially offered us 2 bedrooms, withdrew her support as soon as we became homeless. For 4 months, we lived out of our van with our kids until a homeless shelter opened up. During this time, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law distanced themselves from us, showing little compassion. Despite our efforts to reach out, we were met with judgment from sister-in-law, who received her house after her father's passing and hadn't paid taxes in years. We were criticized for our life choices and were made to feel like failures because we were over 30, had 3 kids, and were struggling. Fast forward, we managed to turn things around drastically. We built a house from scratch, involving our kids, and gained invaluable experience. The outcome was perfect. Our kids were overjoyed to have participated in building their own home. We also started our own business, achieving this success without any help from my husband's family, despite their broken promises. Throughout this journey, I couldn't help but develop a bitter resentment toward them due to their lack of support. Recently, my mother-in-law, who is facing eviction herself after losing her retirement benefits, approached us asking to stay in our home if she became homeless. My initial reaction was to laugh at her audacity. My husband stood by my side, showing his resentment toward her for abandoning us in our time of need. She left offended, and later, sister-in-law criticized us, labeling us as trash for not allowing her soon-to-be evicted elderly mother to move in. I suggested a nearby nursing home for her instead. While some friends said my response was harsh, considering the way they treated us, I don't believe I am the jerk in this situation. Their lack of support when we needed it has created a chasm, and I find it hard to extend a helping hand now.